Hello, humans. Hello, humans. Hello, humans of the world. Hello. Hello, it's me, Ellie Krug, your friendly transgender radio host, person, human, Minnesotan, but really Iowan, Cedar Rapidian, formerly, but still in heart, person, talking to you now. On this day, March 23rd, although I'm taping it on Friday the 20th, but talking to you. In the midst of the virus crisis, hopefully here to give you some small measure of stability, something to ground yourself on, if ever so slightly. And if you are hearing in my voice right now a combination of frustration and a little bit of resignation because of where we are right now. You're hearing it, and you're hearing it accurately, but you're also in a bit going to hear a voice of resiliency and persistence, and hopefully a voice of hope. My, how the landscape has changed since my last broadcast of this show. I did a little bit of foreshadowing because I said in the last show we didn't know where we would be at the time you heard my voice next, and boy, was I right about that. I mean, who 10 days ago would have ever imagined that almost all of America would be shut down in one way or another? As I'm speaking here, we're just a couple of hours past Andrew Cuomo shutting down New York. That comes on the heels of Newsom shutting down California. And I want to make sure that I recognize the many in this country that are already suffering greatly this early in to this crisis. The folks that have lost their jobs or had their hours cut back, or the millions who don't have health insurance and are worried and scared to death about what may be next. My heart goes out to all of you. And I also want to make sure that I talk and I recognize those who are on the front lines right now. That would be our healthcare workers. Oh, my God. God, love all of you. Every one of you, from the person who does the janitorial work in the hospitals all the way up to the brain surgeons. All of you are, I know, doing your part, and you are at risk. And I want you to know that I, along with a gazillion other Americans, are thankful for you and in awe of you. But I also want to recognize those right now who are also now suddenly our frontline soldiers. That's our grocery workers, our clerks in pharmacies, our pharmacists, the people who have largely been invisible in America up till now, and now suddenly we are so dependent on you. And for those of you who are worrying about me, I am okay. I am. I mean, I'm self-isolating. I live in downtown Minneapolis in a 17-story condo building. So as much as I can isolate in a building with 100 some odd units, I'm doing that. I'm in the station today. If you're on Facebook Live, you're seeing me. I just waved to you with a gloved hand. And on my mic right now, I have what looks like a polka-dotted paper condom, which is about covering the mic up. And so I'm doing all right. As much as I'm doing as well as I think as I could under current circumstances, although my speaking and training business has taken a bit of a hit. But I've always been a saver. Even way back when I was 16 years old, first job, first paycheck I got, I put 3/4 of it in the bank. And so I've always been preparing for a rainy day. Unfortunately, right now, we are in the middle of a monsoon. So we're in different times right now than from when you last heard from me, and we're going to have a bit of a different show as a result. First off, my guest is a familiar name to you, to many of my regular listeners. In a few minutes, I'm going to have Dr. Kurt Nelson on to talk about the fear and anxiety many of you are experiencing or those close to you are experiencing. And it's unusual because I had Dr. Kurt on just 4 months ago to help celebrate the 100th episode of this show. Ordinarily, he wouldn't be back for at least another year, but you know what? We need to hear from Dr. Kurt right now. We do, and so he's going to be on. And in this A block, where I'm usually talking about some kind of a historical or contemporary idealist, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what's going on right now. And I want to talk with you about hope a little bit. And in my C block, I'm going to talk with you about, I'll give you an uplifting story. I want to go out big. I want to go out on something positive rather than negative. So, my dear friends, are you with me here? Please be, because I need you. I hope you need me, even if just a little bit. And let me start off with this. I care about you. Every one of you listening to my voice right now, I want you to know that I care about you and your family members and all of those in your circle. I care about your health. I care about your mental being. I care about your ability to make a living. I care about your spirits. And on the larger ledger, right now as I talk to you, I care about America. This great, complicated country, this place we call America, which right now is confused and afraid and reeling. We have been tested as a country, and we will continue to be tested for a good while. Yes, we were tested in 9/11, for sure, but this is a little bit more different, as all you know, because the duration here of the testing will go on much longer, and it will get more complicated as time goes on. This is more like World War II, or the Great Depression, where there was so much fear and uncertainty, where there were things about what we don't know, what the future holds, and how we will get through it. That is where we're at right now, and I know that. But I'm also a hopeless idealist, and I want you to know that you, America, I believe in you, and you, those listening to me right now, I believe in you too. And I believe in your ability to get through all of this crap. To get through all of it. As I've often said, we all have much more grit and resiliency than what we believe. And all of you hearing my voice right now or looking at me on Facebook Live, all of you know, let me just remind you, you have far more grit and resiliency than you even can believe. In part because right now you've made it to this point. You've already gone through enormous change already to just be able to hear my voice right now. And we've faced these other changes. I've talked about 9/11 already. You've all had personal crises in your life unrelated to any of this, just as they've come along about all of us attempting to survive the human condition. And yet you are all still here. And so let me please remind you about how grit and resiliency literally does exist within you. But I also want to talk about the horrible marginalizing that's happening in our country right now. Now remember, I'm a unifier, I'm not a divider. But some things just have to be said, and I am going to say that right now. We are witnessing at this moment how people in power manipulate the truth. We are. And my friend Matt McNeil, oh my gosh, Matt, you are so good and you are so important for us to have right now. He is so much better at channeling rage than I am. He is. But I have rage. I do. We are watching now in real time our quote-unquote leaders change the story. That the virus was nothing to worry about. That was the story at first. And to now say, I always knew it was a pandemic. I was worried to death. But most importantly, for what I want to talk about in the next minute and a half or so, is it's about calling the virus the Chinese virus. That is the height. That is the height of irresponsibility. That is like calling for matches while standing in a pool of gasoline. It is the height of repression. And of course, and we have seen this before. We have seen it with the people in power, how they've marginalized people from the Hispanic Latino community, how they've marginalized my community, transgender people, how they've now come to call liberals as threats to democracy. I get all of that, but this is personal for me right now. Because you may or may not understand, I have 2 Asian daughters. Both of my daughters were born in Korea. Both of them are obviously Asian appearing. One of my daughters, who is nearly 30, has had repeated interactions where white-collar people have continually stared at her. In fact, she got on an airplane last week in Mexico and watched as one person, white-collar person, wiped down her seat while the woman would not take her eyes off my daughter. It is really the old Martin Niemöller poem, first they came for the socialist, and then they came for the communists, and then da-da-da-da-da. They have been coming for us for the last 3.5 years. The problem right now is that many of us are so much more afraid than what we were. Many of us are looking for something to hang our hat on, to grab onto, as a way of making us feel better. I mean, just look at how the gun sales are skyrocketing. And so now to call it the Chinese virus is a way to give people a hook, a way for them to channel their rage, to channel their anger, to channel their fear, to channel all that they're feeling right now, so as to deflect it away from our quote-unquote leaders who fell asleep at the switch. Please, my friends, resist this thing. Please speak up if you hear anyone using the phrase, quote-unquote, Chinese virus. Please think about the damage that this is doing right now to millions. I mean, we are talking tens of millions of Asian Americans, humans like my daughter who never hurt anyone in her entire life and now is afraid to be out in public. I had to go shopping for her, me, at risk. I did it, of course, I love my daughter, there was no hesitation on my part. But that is how hatred puts other people at risk, not only directly but indirectly. We are afraid, I know that, but that is not the way to channel your fear, by picking on them or other. When I come back, I'm going to talk with you. I'm going to have Dr. Kurt Nelson. He's going to talk with you about how to deal with your fear and your anxiety. He will tell you the way to deal with it in a healthy and proper way. Thank you, my friends, for letting me start the show this way. I'll be back in a minute.
I want to
Brending Electrolysis on Grand Avenue in St. Paul has been a leader in permanent hair removal for people of all skin types and backgrounds for over 30 years, celebrating diversity and priding themselves on finding the right treatment plan for each client's individual needs, regardless of race or gender. Services include electrolysis, body waxing, facials, microneedling, and permanent makeup. Book your 60-minute complimentary consultation, including a 15-minute treatment today for beautiful, lasting results. Visit brendingelectrolysis.com.
Did you know there's deconstruction funding available now for homeowners and contractors in Hennepin County? If you are embarking on a remodel or teardown this year, consider hiring Better Futures Minnesota's deconstruction crews instead of demolition. By taking a house or building apart by hand instead of destroying it with heavy equipment, the materials can be reused or recycled instead of going into the landfill. It is much more cost-effective and is a carbon-neutral solution. Go to betterfuturesminnesota.com and look under Business Services to learn more.
And we're back on AM 950, Ellie Krug, Ellie 2.0 radio. And it's not just a really great song about, we will always carry on. We will, just as I just said to you, okay? All right, well, listen, everyone, I have Dr. Kurt Nelson on the line. Dr. Kurt, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Ellie.
Oh, and thanks for being back on Ellie 2.0, Dr. Kurt. Now, we should just make sure all the audience knows that you're a behavioral psychologist, okay? You're a clinical psychologist. But that's all the more reason I love having you is because you and I are both in the business of how humans react to things, right?
Exactly. That's good point. Thank you.
So welcome, and Dr. Kurt, listeners are familiar with you because you helped me celebrate our 100th show just several months ago, and I wanted to have you on because, frankly, you're one of the smartest people I know, but you're also incredibly great at conveying tranquility and a sense of peacefulness for us, and we need this right now. So thank you, and let me just throw out the prompt, okay? And that is, we're dealing with fear right now. Why? Why is the very first thing we run to is fear, okay? And then, of course, we'll have the longer conversation about how our listeners should deal with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, so it's perfectly rational to have fear because we are operating in a world where it's a lot of unknown. There is a virus that is out there that we don't know that much about that is causing people to be sick and many people to die. So it's not an unrational aspect to have a fear from this. I think there are a number of, truths about the fatality rates and a number of other factors that go into this that we're probably overhyping that fear, but understand it is a normal reaction to be fearful, particularly because we just don't know. And that is a very terrifying thing for many people in any situation. And in a situation such as this, it is really something that people just, they should not embrace, but know that it's a common reaction. So.
Well, and I'm thinking back to 9/11, which both you and I lived through, and most of our listeners did. And of course, we were afraid immediately after 9/11 because one of the fears was, are we going to have more attacks? Right?
Exactly.
Where will the next attack be? But as time went over, by 2 weeks in, we realized there were, it doesn't look like there's going to be another attack. Okay, and we started to get less fearful. This is different, is it not? Because we just don't know what the end point is.
Yeah,
right?
And I think the part of this is when is it going to end? As you said, we don't know the end point. We don't know the damage that is going to happen, both from the physical health being of ourselves, our loved ones, our neighbors, our community, but also then there's a financial aspect of this too, that it is driving some economic instability and unknowns along that line. So we're being doubly whammied with this because we just don't have a good set to compare it to. We call it a black swan event, right? So we compare things. We often compare things when we get into situations like this where there's aspects that are frightening or unknown, and we look back to what we've experienced in the past. And we haven't experienced anything like this. We've used elements of it's like the flu or it's like this, but it really isn't. And so we don't understand it. We don't even have a language that we can really go to it. So that's part of what is causing this fear, and it's part of why we're responding the way we are.
So, all right. So we've labeled it, and everybody's like, okay, yeah, I'm afraid, but what do I do about it? So there are obviously all kinds of strategies that people can employ. I mean, I'm sure there are people that are self-medicating, over this. I'm sure that there are people sleeping a whole lot as much as they can to escape. But what strategies do you have for us to deal about this fear?
Yeah, so part of this, you have to think about it as a element where it's this anxiety-ridden thing of stress because we're not sure what's going on. Part of that is driven by media. Part of it is driven by, our own fight or flight, response that we have, or freezing, which is another aspect of that fight, flight, or freeze response that we have. So I think there's a couple things. First off is just take a moment, take a breath, understand that this too shall pass, right? We will go through this. But I think one thing we have to do is refocus, right? So we have to refocus where we're thinking and not ruminate over this day and night. Another thing is to realign. So realign who you're listening to. Take a moment to say, you know what, instead of being on Twitter and following that, nonstop 24/7, limit, digesting the news to 10 minutes a day. Try to make sure that you're not just so hyper-focused on this that it becomes all-encompassing, and then reframe how things are going. We're in a world where we're self-isolating, and we're physically isolating, and just make sure that we're not socially isolating from others. People at this point, it's hard because we are social creatures and we want that, we crave that social interaction, but it's hard to have now. So make sure that you're reframing how you're doing things and set things up that you are going out and reaching out to people and you're talking to others and you're having that human connection, even though it may not be physical. At least talk to people, pick up the phone. There's Zoom and all these other technology that we have today is actually one of the best things of being able to cope, because we can get on and FaceTime with people. We can stay in communication and connection with them at this time, which is so important about those human bonds that we need to have.
Well, I had earlier today, I emailed a friend and said, I miss you, and I'm really sorry that we never had that lunch that we, said that we were going to get. And her answer back was, Ellie, next week we can do Zoom, and you can have lunch on your side, I'll have lunch on my side, and we'll just talk over lunch with Zoom, and I thought that's really brilliant, it really is.
Well, you and I are both members of the City of Lakes Rotary Club, and they're doing the virtual happy hour tonight. So, I mean, we can be creative. You can go out and make those opportunities that, we used to do in person, but now we have to do virtually, at least for a short time. And those can help. Those can alleviate the fear. We're part of a community. We support each other. Those are vital things. Being isolated is bad for our health, and it's scary. And so I think part of this, too, you asked about at the beginning, what is some of the fear? Well, there's the fear of the unknown, but there's also that fear of being, wow, if you are alone, or even if you're stuck with your family, that some people might find that fearful, right? But there are those opportunities for us to connect with others outside of this. So,
I saw a Twitter post earlier this week. It was a man who said, sports are all gone. And there's this woman sitting on my couch. I'm told she's my wife. She seems quite delightful.
Well, and again, I talked about reframing, right? And reframing this as an opportunity. I have realized, I have a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old. And, normal times after dinner, they kind of disperse and are gone, right? My wife and I are like, where'd they go? They didn't even take their plates off the table. But the past couple of days, they've been stuck with us. And I realized they're kind of sticking around more because I think they're craving that interaction as well. Right. And they're not getting it by going to school and being with their friends. And so it's that personal component. We ended up playing a game the other night. We sat around and we watched some television together. And those opportunities to bond with your family, like you said, it's like, who is this person next to me? Let's have that opportunity to have some of that bonding that we so crave and miss. And as a family, particularly with teenagers, we may not get all the time. So, reframe how we think about this as an opportunity to connect. It may be in different ways, but it's an opportunity to connect with those people, and enjoy that. Just relish that.
Okay, well, Dr. Kurt, we've got to take a break, but when we come back, I want to talk more about strategies. I also want to talk about what's going on with the president labeling it the Chinese virus. Okay, we'll be back in all right, listeners, we've been talking to Dr. Kurt Nelson, the wonderful Dr. Kurt Nelson. When we come back from our break, we'll talk to him some more. You're listening to me, Ellie Krug. If you like what you hear, visit my website at elliekrug.com. Particularly at this time right now, I have blog posts out there that hopefully will make you feel better. Thanks. We'll be back in a second.
Hi, Alex of Better Futures, Minnesota. Does your business or organization need janitorial services, lawn care, or snow services? Obtain a free, no-obligation estimate from Better Futures, Minnesota when you mention that you heard about us on AM 950. Our supervised, hardworking, and affordable crews will handle your interior and exterior building and property maintenance needs while you help men in your community transform their lives and walk on a positive path to success. It's a win-win. To learn more, go to betterfuturesminnesota.com under Business Services.
Brending Electrolysis on Grand Avenue in St. Paul has been a leader in permanent hair removal for people of all skin types and backgrounds for over 30 years, celebrating diversity and priding themselves on finding the right treatment plan for each client's individual needs, regardless of race or gender. Services include electrolysis, body waxing, facials, microneedling, and permanent makeup. Book your 60-minute complimentary consultation, including a 15-minute treatment today for beautiful, lasting results. Visit brendingelectrolysis.com.
How long till my soul gets it right? Did any human being ever reach that kind of light? I call on the resting soul.
And we're back on AM 950, Ellie 2.0 radio. We've been talking with Dr. Kurt Nelson, a behavioral psychologist, who has his own company. But Dr. Kurt, before we go any further, you've got a wonderful podcast that you put out. Will you talk about that? Give everyone the link or the place where they could find the podcast.
Yeah, it's Behavioral Grooves, and so you can just go to any of your podcast things and type in Behavior Grooves. We're on most of them, and we are doing. We're starting actually. I believe today will be the first episode of a series around the behavioral response that people have to the coronavirus and everything, the crisis that's been going on, and trying to understand why we're responding the way we are and what's going on with all of that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, and you know what? You're welcome. And, and I don't think that we can ever get enough information to talk about how we can deal with our fear and our anxiety. Now, before we took our break, you were, talking about how maybe people were self-discovering each other and that, I call it making lemonade, an opportunity to make some lemonade. Listeners, for those who are interested in my blog piece of March 16th, I actually put out a number of different ideas on how to deal with what's going on. One of those was to actually, Dr. Kurt, you remember this? People used to actually use ink and put it on paper. And then write things to humans and then put a thing called a stamp on an envelope and then send it off. Do you remember that part?
I vaguely. Something called a letter.
A letter or a note card.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think that right now at this time, getting something from somebody where they write and say, I care about you, and maybe share a great memory or something like that, I think that would be incredibly important about us staying connected. Don't you think?
Absolutely. I think there are a number of ways of doing that. Those handwritten notes, just from my work with inside organizations about recognizing people, are always some of the best types of recognition that you can get. And in this time, it doesn't have to be related to work. It's just related to people. You've taken the time and the energy and the effort to go through and as you said, handwrite a note to somebody. That means a lot. Right. There's that element of effort that goes with that. It's not just typing off mail. It takes that extra moment of thought and energy, and people really appreciate that. So in this time, I think that's a way of helping out others, and it also helps you out as you're doing it.
Well, and it's such a granular thing because you've got the note, right in front of you, and you keep going back to it time and time again to read it. Because humans like to have that. We like to have something that we can. Oh, you know what? I want to feel good again because somebody said that. And so.
Yeah.
Well, listen. Let's now flip that a little bit and talk about how, in this time, and I'm a unifier, not a divider. But I do want to talk about how our president, literally, it is the president, using the phrase Chinese virus as a way of stoking animosity. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, so he's trying to use fear in a way to, first of all, detract away from his failure to show up on this virus thing in a timely basis, but he's using it as a way to unify people. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Interesting from a way of looking at it, but it can be very painful for people, different things. So using that language is a element to say it's us as in Americans and them as in others outside of us. And so really painting this picture of the other out there, and that causes fear, right? We're tribal from an evolutionary perspective. We form these tribes of people that we feel are part of our community and our family, and we protect them, and we protect them from outside forces. And so when you start framing something as a Chinese virus versus, COVID-19, which is the disease from it, or a coronavirus, or SARS-CoV-2, which is actually the virus that is being out there, that's the one that's causing all of this problem, and labeling it instead as Chinese virus. So what you're saying is it's their problem, they caused it on us, and so now we should fear them, or we should have anger against them. And I don't think that's a very positive approach. It may be unifying for some people within, the United States, but I think overall it is not a positive aspect of this.
Well, and not at all. And, and I have two Asian-appearing daughters. Both of my daughters were born in Korea. I'm an adoptive parent, and my oldest daughter has been suffering as a result of this. I mean, she has told me about an uptick in people staring at her in public, so much so that it's affected her health, and caused her to be afraid to go out into some public places, and I just, we as people can come together in such a more positive way than having to go to the fear thing, to go to the othering, kind of pole star. But of course, we could have this discussion for a whole different show about, we've got to change the way the landscape here is in our country. And of course, one way to do that is through elections, and so obviously that's November. And I'm going to throw a left curve at you here. Do you think it's possible that all of this is going to change the way we view our interconnectedness? Because remember, human behavior, you just used the word tribes, and we believe we're in our tribes and we're separate from our tribes from other tribes. But in the reality, the people in power are being affected right now by the people who are at the lowest end of the ladder, because those are the folks who don't have health care. Those are the folks who are going to work sick. Those are the folks who are, who are spreading the virus because they don't have any kind of a safety net. What do you think about that?
You touch on a really important thing here, and what are going to be the lasting societal changes based on this? And so, there's an element of social norms that happen that drive a lot of our behavior, but also how we think about things. And one of the potential positives of this is, that we'll realize that we, having separation from other people, that we really crave that separation. We need that, not that separation. We crave that belongingness. We crave that. We need that sense of community. And that sense of community can come not just from our neighbors and different things, particularly in this wired world where we're connected. It can come from across the country. It can come from across the globe. It can come from people who look very different than you. And I'm hopeful. I'm very, very hopeful that we realize that and that we understand that, and that as we move forward, that may be a new social norm of how we think about things and we interact. The other aspect you talked about is, the idea of, those that have and those that have not, and the ability, and maybe we'll realize that, hey, it's really important for everybody to be able to say, when I'm sick, that I don't need to go into work in order to pay for food and rent and anything else, and that we as a society go, look, these people are important, not only because of them, but hey, that is it benefits all of us because they're not out there sick, spreading disease and germs and viruses that can impact everybody. So hopefully, again, maybe some of those facets will come into place. And so we won't go to restaurants that don't have sick leave for their employees. We won't do that, for different things. Or maybe it'll be a way of promoting that, hey, we give our employees, sick leave, and so I'm going to, go to that restaurant more often.
Well,
so I think there are some things that could happen from this.
And as you're saying that, what really popped into my head, do you remember when there was the push about banning cigarettes in restaurants? Yeah. When certain restaurants, said we're going to go smoke free, and there were people like, oh my God, nobody's going to go. Nobody's going to come to your place because you're being dictatorial, or my friend can't smoke or whatever. And the reality was, people started flocking to those places. Do you remember that?
Yeah. So again, it may happen from a financial perspective because of the response that we're seeing and having a bigger awareness of this issue. So again, this is a fearful time. It's a painful time. You can't discount that, right? It's real. It happens. But there are some glimmers of hope as we look forward, because this will end. There will be an end to this. And once we get there, maybe we can be a better society. Maybe we can be a better world. And that's what I'm hopeful for.
Well, Dr. Kurt, I've just got to tell you, you're here on the show on very short notice, and I'm just so grateful for you yet again to come here to Ellie 2.0 and to talk with us, to help reassure us about certain things. I want to thank you for that.
No, well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Well, okay, and give us the last. They can get to your behavioral grooves by just Googling behavioral grooves. Is that right?
Yep, and it's behavioralgrooves.com. We have a website out there. They can do that. You can always reach me on Twitter at @whatmotivates, and I'd be happy if anybody has any other questions. Be happy to answer them.
Okay, well, I'm going to start following you on that, okay? And, all right, well, listeners, we've been speaking to Dr. Kurt Nelson from Minneapolis. Dr. Kurt, thanks for being on Ellie 2.0 Radio.
Thank you, Ellie.
All right, well, listeners, this is great. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. When we come back from the break, I will do my C block. I'm going to give you some hope, a happy story about how two people cross the big divide. You need something to hang on to as you leave this show. We'll be back in a second. Thanks. Brending Electrolysis on Grand Avenue in St. Paul has been a leader in permanent hair removal for people of all skin types and backgrounds for over 30 years, celebrating diversity and priding themselves on finding the right treatment plan for each client's individual needs, regardless of race or gender. Services include electrolysis, body waxing, facials, microneedling, and permanent makeup. Book your 60-minute complimentary consultation, including a 15-minute treatment today for beautiful, lasting results. Visit brendingelectrolysis.com.
If you're looking to save money on your home or building improvement project, check out Better Futures Minnesota's reuse retail warehouse in South Minneapolis. We carry salvage building materials such as cabinetry, flooring, plumbing fixtures, appliances, lighting, and more, saving you money and saving the planet by keeping these items out of the landfill, by giving them another life. Selections change daily, and we also take donations. Go to betterfuturesminnesota.com and look under Reuse Warehouse to learn more. Let us know AM 950 sent you.
we're back on AM 950, Ellie 2.0 radio. I'll tell you, Dr. Kurt Nelson, a stable voice in a time of instability, and now you know why I wanted to have him on the show, okay? I mean, nothing more needs to be said. All right, I'm in my C block. I'm under a much tighter window than what we have because we've been changing the way we hit our marks on this show. But so I just want to do a couple of things. First, I want to ask all of you, please, if you really want to be, if you want good news, if you want to understand how the world can be really good, how humans can get past fears, how we can be so good to each other, please subscribe to my email, my newsletter, The Ripple, and people love The Ripple, and you can go to my website at elliekrug.com, go down the menu bar, go to where it says newsletters. You can click on this month's issue of The Ripple, which just came out early this week, and then you can subscribe to it because there are good things in The Ripple. Secondly, I'm going to start. Hopefully, this week, start doing Facebook Live or Zoom presentations as ways of uplifting people who will follow me and follow my work. If you follow my work, you know that I deliver hope. I do. I deliver hope and how we can believe in each other. So just if you're not on a Facebook friend of mine, just go to at Ellie Krug on Facebook and you'll find me and do a friend request and I'll get you on there. Okay. And so stay tuned for that. And I want to close out the show with a happy story, a story of hope, a story of how America can be at its very best. So, and if you go click on my newsletter. You go to my website at elliekrug.com, click on the newsletter. You're going to see this, one of the stories I highlight. And I'm sure some of you have heard this about the state of Virginia, congressional candidate, a man by the name of Qasim Rashid, who, within the last month or so, got a message on his website, a message saying, quote, we do not need your ilk in our nation, period. Let alone anyone in a seat above street sweeper, period, unquote. Qasim he's a Democrat. He's running for Congress in the 1st District in Virginia. The man that posted that is a man named Oz Dillon. And now Qasim, he is born in Pakistan. He is the author of a couple of books, including a book about Muslim people and about the stereotypes that are wrong about Muslims. And he also happens to be a man with a good heart. Here's where this is the key part of the story. So if somebody had posted on something hateful on a candidate's page somewhere, most candidates are going to just simply, ignore it. But what Qasim did is he actually tracked down this Oz Dillon and went to his Facebook page, to Oz Dillon's Facebook page. And yes, he saw other intolerant, hateful words that Dillon had been spewing, but he also found out that Oz Dillon had set up a GoFundMe page because Oz's wife had a very serious health condition and they did not have the funds. We're talking deductibles and copays. They didn't have the funds to pay more than $20,000 in medical bills. And so what Qasim did was he actually went to the GoFundMe page and donated $55. And then Qasim went to his 400,000 followers. Okay, I mean, this is a man who's running a really tight campaign in Virginia. And he wrote to his followers and told them about Oz Dillon's GoFundMe page, and he asked them all to contribute to Oz Dillon. And lo and behold, his followers, the people that supported Qasim because he's got a good heart, because he's a good human, guess what they did? They all donated. They donated so much so that they raised more than $20,000 for Oz Dillon. So much so that Oz Dillon shut down the GoFundMe page because he said, we've got our needs met. But the story doesn't end there because Qasim reached out to Oz Dillon and said, hey, you're my brother in humanity. And Oz Dillon said, I didn't expect that. I expected you to hate me. And Qasim said, no, I wouldn't do that. The two men have since met. they become friends. And guess what? Guess who has a huge Qasim Rashid for Congress campaign sign in their front yard? Yeah, Oz Dillon does. Because we're good to each other. Because we care about each other. I hope that story helps a little bit. A big thanks to my sponsors, Brending Electrolysis, and to Better Futures Minnesota. A big thanks to my producer, Brett Johnson. Brett is doing really incredible work, and so are everybody here at the station. Chad Larson, who's running the station, trying to keep everything going. Please support this station. Please support this station because it is critical for us. And so, Brett, you're doing great work, and thank you for keeping me online. And listeners, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for supporting me and my work. And please, be good to each other. Believe in you. You have grit and resiliency. You will get through this. We all will. Talk to you next week. Bye.
I guess I just